Have you ever found yourself thinking you're doing the right thing when you start healing your trauma? You start recognizing all the shit you've been through in your childhood, with your family in the past, only to get to this point where it feels like you're getting worse. It feels like you're moving backwards. It feels like all the work that you've done hasn't amounted to anything at all. That's what we're going to cover in today's episode. That, along with what is a healing crisis, and a key factor in recognizing how you can support yourself when it is time for that healing crisis in your trauma recovery journey, in your generational cycle breaking life, okay? We'll also discuss why this happens when you're starting to recover from trauma, because recognition that just like anything you do, you're going to be in recovery. You're gonna be, taking a couple steps forward, and it's gonna feel like sometimes you're taking a million steps back, and that's okay, but that's a part of the process. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Anywho, my name is Toni. I'm the trauma doula, and I'm here to support you in breaking generational cycles, healing trauma, and uncovering who you are outside of trauma, so that you can live the life that you're allowed to live now. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, thanks for being here. And if you like this episode, you like what it's about, go ahead and give me a little review on Spotify, Apple. If you're on YouTube, drop a little comment, say hi, whatever. I don't bite. But welcome. I'm happy y'all are here. I'm feeling a little snacky today. I need a cheesecake. I don't know if anybody feels that. Just need a little hug from the universe to tell me everything's gonna be okay. And that a cheesecake would help with that. But that is my reward for recording this episode. How are you doing? Seriously, how are you doing? You can answer that, or you could pretend that you answered that, but I think you should ask yourself and your inner child, how are you? Before we even start, how are you? So, what is a healing crisis? Let's talk about that a little bit. A healing crisis is when you start on your healing journey. Maybe you're getting all the memories, you're getting all the stuff that comes up when you start healing. You're getting the excitement, the push forward, maybe I'm in the right place, maybe I've found the right person to do this work with, this shadow work, this healing work, this spiritual, depth pulling work for my childhood trauma. Maybe you've gotten into the right spots. And you start kind of pulling things out of the hat. You start really diving in. And then all of a sudden, all the things that were feeling good start to feel really shitty. It starts to feel so fucking shitty. You're tired all the time. You're more anxious than you've ever been. You're more maybe depressed than you've ever been. You can't get off the couch. You're watching reality TV shows. You're smoking too much fucking gas. Okay, you're doing all of these things, and it seems like you're doing it more now than you were before you started your trauma recovery journey. That is when you know you've entered your healing crisis. And I call it truly a healing crisis because it can start to feel like you're falling apart and you're thinking I was supposed to be getting better. Things were supposed to be better. I'm getting help now. I'm getting support. I'm doing the work. So why does it feel so fucking hard? And that's what you really start to ask yourself. Why does it feel so hard now that I'm in a place to get the help? Now that I'm with a person that can support me, now that I'm stable enough to even be thinking about these things. Because sometimes what happens is, you know, you reach a certain point where you feel like stable or just safe enough, and all of a sudden the lid starts to boil and things start to come up, and you're like, oh wait, maybe my childhood wasn't so great. Or if you did know it wasn't so great, maybe you start to go, I'm having way more anxiety than I had. I'm having, all these memories that I never had before. Maybe you're remembering things that don't quite make sense for the story that you have about your upbringing in your childhood. Feel like someone needed to hear that? The things that you're remembering, the things you've been told aren't adding up? Yeah. That starts to happen because you got to a place and even a brain development stage where your brain and your body can finally start to dive into things that it was never able to dive into before. So you enter into the stage where these things are coming up and you seek help because these things are coming up. You get to the point where you're getting the help, you feel like you're making this progress. You feel like, oh, this is good, this is great. And then all of a sudden, boom. If we go boom over here, that might have been kind of loud, sorry about that. But all of a sudden, boom, you feel worse than you've ever felt before. And you're thinking, maybe I should have just stayed where I was. I know what that is. I could just deal with this level of boiling over and uncomfortability and shutdown and not have to, I just took the lid off and now everything is coming out. That is your healing crisis. And whether you look at it from the, some people might call it a dark night of the soul. Some people call it a healing crisis. They are the same thing. Those words are the same. So why does this happen? That's something I think is important to understand, because if you don't understand why it's happening to you, you may decide that it's time for you to just dip out. I'm done with this healing stuff. I can just go back to the way things were. The funny thing about getting started is that you can't leave it unfinished. You get to a certain point where the things are coming up. The cat's been let out of the bag. I don't know why a cat was ever in the bag, but the cat's been let out of the bag. The bag is open. Pandora's box is unsealed. And you have all the things coming out. So you can't really put the lid back on that box. And it may feel like sometimes you're regretting even getting started. And I understand that. I've been there. It's difficult. Okay. But understanding why it happens is going to help you understand why you need to keep going. The thing is, you have to go back. You got to go back and get you. Especially in the cases of chaotic and uncertain childhoods. If you grew up with, that upbringing of just generational trauma and being brought into things that you thought were normal and this is just the way things are, and then come to find out there are people that don't live like that. There are people that don't suffer the way that you had to suffer. So coming into the space of understanding, oh, maybe that wasn't right. Maybe I didn't deserve that. Maybe I didn't need to go through that. That wasn't how things should have been. I should have been protected. I should have been taken care of. It wasn't my responsibility to take care of everyone else as a, 4-year-old. It wasn't my responsibility to try and, stop my parent from being harmed by my other parent, or whatever the situation was. It doesn't matter. What matters is suddenly You're recognizing that that wasn't right. And the person you are now, most likely as an adult, if you are a kid in this situation right now, if you are underage in this situation right now, you might not be here yet, and that's okay. That's okay. But if you are an adult at this moment and you are reflecting, you're able to reflect, that is telling me that you're in a stage of, you're starting the healing process already to be able to reflect. But this healing crisis that comes forward, it happens because you have to go back. You have to see from the eyes and the new perspective of this adult. And you might have to come around that spiral more than one time. And the thing is, these feelings, these situations, these things that happen that you were thrust into through no fault of your own, they're all living, breathing sensations and feelings in your body that are being held, right? Whether it's a pain in your neck or a twinge in your hip, a tummy ache that you always get, and no matter what test you've gotten, it doesn't make sense why you have a tummy ache. Those are all signs and symptoms of trauma that is unreleased in your body, that is just sitting there. And what happens is, when we go through these tough experiences in our childhood, our inner child, a part of our inner child is holding the pain, the drama, the fear. So you have this little inner child part that is holding all that happened to you. And if you don't remember your past, they're holding that so you can go on and not have that memory. They're holding that pain, that fear, that tummy ache, that nausea, so that you can go on and not have it be connected to what happened. You just think it's a tummy ache. You don't realize where it came from, because that inner child is holding that. And it's our job when we're healing to go back for our own inner child and stop abandoning the place and the person, that child that had to go through that and should never have had to. Now that we're older, it's our job. It's your job now to go back for them. So when that healing crisis comes around and things start feeling worse than they've ever felt, that's because you're feeling what your inner child has been holding for you. It said, I'm going to hold this so you can grow up and you can get us out of here. I'm not looking for anyone to save me but you. We're going to save ourselves. And that's what happens. That's why that healing crisis comes up. And that's why it feels so bad. Because this kid, your inner kid, has been holding that energy. And so take a breath, let it out, and recognize that you're here now and you can be supported. You can get support, you can get help, and all hope is not lost. Your inner child is holding this, and this can be released. This energy, it can be released. You don't have to hold on to that anymore. Most of the time it wasn't yours to begin with, especially in the case of generational trauma. It's not yours. You don't have to hold it. But the thing is, that space is stuck, is frozen because of what happened. It's frozen in time. And when you start to heal, what I always like to tell my clients is, you're unbuttoning a shirt when you start your healing, your trauma recovery. You're unbuttoning your shirt. And no one ever taught you how to button a shirt. So if you've ever seen a kid button a shirt, the buttons are all, somehow you're always missing buttons and they're all like messed up. The one from down here is up here. The one from up here is down there. And somehow your shirt is all twisted up. You miss some holes. And so you got to go back and unbutton that shirt. And then you might stop and think, oh, this is it. This is where it was all messed up. And then you start buttoning it up again. Then you realize, no, it's messed up down here. Right? Then you got to unbutton it some more. And you got to go all the way back down. And you rebutton it up. And then you realize, oh, I never learned how to do this. So I still missed another button. You're just unbuttoning. And every time you have to kind of maybe go a little bit further down, and then you rebutton, and then maybe you gotta go back because you didn't. And that's okay, because you're learning something that you didn't get to learn before. You're understanding something you didn't get to understand before. You're releasing something that you didn't even recognize needed to be released. You didn't even recognize it was there. So that is a major, major consideration when you're starting to heal, is the place that your inner child is holding for you. And the fact that now that you're older, it doesn't mean that you learned the thing that you needed to learn. No one ever taught you how to button your shirt. So you've just been walking around with buttons like that. And that is what it's like to have a healing crisis. So you go to heal, and you think, I'm unbuttoning my shirt. This feels pretty good. I'm getting these buttons on right. And then you got to undo what you did because you didn't go far enough. You didn't dig deep enough. And you don't know how deep to dig, but you will hit a moment where you go, oh, that's where I needed to dig. Maybe I was unbuttoning a shirt I wasn't even wearing because somebody told me I should wear that shirt, and you started on the wrong shirt. All of this is in recognition, in understanding that you have to go back to get what you left behind. And what you left behind is a part of yourself. So what is the key to understanding and being able to handle the healing crisis? Because it can be kind of intense. I'm not gonna lie, it can be kind of intense. The healing crisis can kind of be a lot, okay? It can kind of it's a lot, right? It can be painful. It can be scary. All of those things. Something I really like to start all my clients with when it comes to their trauma recovery and getting started is laying that groundwork. And the number one key to success that I've seen people who have been able to support themselves and to get through a healing crisis and to understand it and to really move through it is the willingness and the ability to sit with uncomfortable feelings and sensations that you would normally avoid, okay? Because avoidance of the thing that we find painful or uncomfortable is going to cause a lot more pain. So learning how to sit with the sensation, the feeling, and the pain is the number one key to your success when it comes to trauma recovery. To be able to sit with it. Because when you go back for your inner child, when you go back for that wounded inner child, it's not a happy kid. They're not a happy kid. They're crying. They're scared. They're sad. They're inconsolable maybe. But it's still your job to go back and support them. It's still your job. And your inner child is the place of light within you. And if you ever want that light, that joy, and to live a life where joy happens, or moments of joy, flashes that get longer and longer and grow and become even more than what they are right now, if you want that for yourself, you're gonna have to go back. You're gonna have to go back. And you are gonna have to sit with those uncomfortable feelings that your inner child has been sitting with. Because your avoidance, and we all avoid things. We all avoid the things that make us uncomfortable or are painful or that we just don't want to deal with. Just avoid them. As generational cycle breakers, we can be highly avoidant and very good at avoiding what we don't want to look at. And that is a skill that we learned to be able to handle being in families with generational cycles of trauma. To be in families that are emotionally immature. To be people who more often than not, because the person who received the most abuse in emotionally immature families and within generational trauma systems are often the highly sensitive. So to be able to deal with a heightened level of sensitivity and energy and being able to pick up on other people's energy, you most likely had to learn how to avoid things that were painful or uncomfortable because you can feel everything. So recognizing that you have the ability to come around and pick up where your inner child has left off so that they don't have to sit in the past alone anymore. And neither do you, because now you have each other. To be able to sit with uncomfortable feelings and sensations and to recognize them as not happening in the past anymore. You're in the present, you're where you are, and it happened, and it doesn't have to happen anymore. And to recognize the healing crisis as a natural, normal cycle of healing that doesn't last forever. You do get through it. And if you want to work with me, all of my links are in the description box in the episode, and you can book a consultation to see if I would be a good fit for you to work with me as a somatic movement therapist. Remember, be kind to yourself, be true to yourself. You can heal. You do deserve to heal. You deserve kindness.